So we met today for a special edition of the Data Center Revolution podcast. It does happen to be Hispanic Heritage Month, and we do all happen to be brown. So we're going to talk about a number of things today. But first, let's go over some introductions, let people know who you are. I'm going to start off with Alejandro.
Right now, I'm Chief Operating Officer for Layer 9 Data Centers and head of data center operations.
Layer 9 is a data center company in...
Yeah, we're a hyperscale construction firm that are based out of the U.S., and we cater the Latin America market.
Very cool.
Right now, we're starting our first build, 96-megawatt facility.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, down in the
See, that's American-size development in Mexico. So it's going to be interesting to take into the story later when we see where we're at now. So we'll start, though. Like, where are you from? What brought you to the data center industry? What brought you to work in the U.S.?
Well, interesting story. Actually, my background comes from finance because my family came from finance.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a business major. Everybody thinks I'm an engineer, which I'm not. Yeah.
Business.
It's come as a surprise to a lot of people, right? How did you got here? So again, I started working in the industry when I started working with a Caterpillar distributor. With
Caterpillar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Selling generators.
Oh, Caterpillar generators, yeah.
But, data centers in Mexico were non-existent.
What was the size of a data center in Mexico back then?
2 megawatts, 1
like
megawatt.
That was like the biggest data center in the country.
Yeah, we're talking about 2003, 2001. 2001.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, even the U.S. market was kind of taking off back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 megawatt was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean,
back in
it
the day.
was a big
1
deal.
megawatt was something.
Yeah, it's a big thing to be proud of. I mean,
Exactly. So anyway, I started there with generation, selling generators, emergency standby generators.
what type of customers were you working with?
Industrial, commercial,
Okay.
basically everything, right?
So this is before you got in the data center. This is like the foundation of it all.
That was the foundation. And not coming from a electrical background is interesting because people didn't think I can do it, right? Like, what is this guy doing in the industry? But, I combined the financial with the technical portion, and that, turned out to be a great combination. So created peak shaving projects, peak sharing projects for commercial applications, which is actually a financial sell for companies. You're going to use a generator, your standby generator for X, and you're going to get an economical return. So it made a lot of sense. Why? Because Caterpillar was super expensive back then.
How old were you when you started working at Caterpillar?
I think I was 27 years old.
So in Guadalajara?
28?
Did you go to school in Guadalajara?
No, in Monterey.
In Monterey?
Yeah, Monterey.
Okay, so did you go to high school there? Is there
high
college
school.
there?
Yeah, college there. Yeah. In Mexico, typically where you're born is typically where you go to school, or at least in decent sized cities, right? You got Monterrey, you got Guadalajara, you got Mexico.
Yeah.
And there's decent, very good universities down in those areas. So you study there, you graduate, you meet your wife there, and then you basically stay there for the rest of your life. You don't move anywhere.
Well, you said 26, you got to the Caterpillar stuff. What was the in between of figuring it out up until 26?
There's a lot of story, but to get to this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you get this far, and you're in the seat of Layer 9 data centers. It's like, well, even you started late. Getting in the industry at 26. So like someone coming out thinking they have to get right into it out of college or something. Even you. So what was your first few years like before you got to industrial generators?
Always, I was involved in the manufacturing side. After Caterpillar, Marisa, that's the largest distributor in Latin America for Caterpillar. That's I think by now it's $600-700 million per year company. I moved to the UPS side. I started working for the Caterpillar UPS manufacturing company. It was back then Active Power.
Active Power. I was going to ask that question.
Active Power.
They made a lot of people, man.
I know.
Yeah, so always interesting enough. I loved the product because you broke the rules, right? You were dealing with a kinetic
What do you mean?
energy battery or a mechanical battery in a double conversion box, right? Living with batteries and living with UPSs, double conversion UPSs. So, and 21 seconds or 30 seconds against back then 15 minutes, 21 minutes, right?
Some companies even half an hour to an hour.
Oh, yeah.
They were wild.
And back then, it was a must, right? You got to follow the guidelines and you got to have 15 minutes at least. So,
yeah, as minimum. They got some guys
as a minimum, right?
Minimum.
So for 7 years, I was, rowing against the current. I started with them managing Northern Mexico and then parts of Latin America. And they were kind enough to invite me to come to the United States to manage the West Coast for them.
So did you stop managing like Latin America and everything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Up West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast. And that's how I got to Phoenix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically it told me, you got Denver and you got Arizona. You take a pick. And my wife picked Phoenix because she knew I was not going to be shoveling snow. Yeah. So I moved to Phoenix, and then, my career started in the West Coast and started moving along. Then I moved to another company called Vicon.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically a mechanical battery, direct current mechanical battery. And of course, always involved with the data center industry, right?
Competition of Active Power, I believe. It was the competition for Active Power.
Oh, is it competitive?
There was a competitive back in the day, a little bit of history there. I throw in that cameo. It was the competition of Active Power back in the day.
Yeah, the difference was that, Active Power had its own UPS, and Vicon only had a battery. So they joined venture with
Did you do all this in Monterey? Were you just living in Monterey, kind of switching companies?
No, that was when I was in Phoenix. When I got to Phoenix, I would live in the United States, right?
Oh, okay. We're already here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, spent some time with a company called Midtronics Battery Monitoring System.
Yeah.
So I stayed there for 11 months because, it's a small part of the ecosystem, right? And I wanted something bigger.
Did you start making connections within the U.S. already?
Yeah, and it was interesting, right? Because dealing with U.S. folks and even communicating with U.S. folks was not easy for me. My English,
what do you mean?
I think my English is pretty good, right? But the whole way you communicate with U.S. people is different than how you communicate with Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. It's very different.
You say you're more direct?
The tone is different. The language is different. Let me put it this way. If you had a conversation in Mexico, right, in the United States, HR would certainly get that I can tell you. It doesn't mean that we're disrespectful, but, how we communicate is very different. Mm-hmm. It's very friendly. Everything's, has two sides of it, right? And it's different. It's, again, and sometimes...
How's HR in Mexico then?
It's getting better. It's certainly getting better, right?
I will say, yeah, it's a different culture. So they act for different things that we will act in U.S. It's just a different set of rules, I will say, for many things.
So in Mexico, you say hi to a girl, right? You kiss her. You do this in the United States, they're like, oh.
No,
what do you mean, right? No, people get a little apprehensive. But so after Midtronics, I moved to PDI, Power Distribution. So as you can see, my career, I was kind of started down in generation and then with switchgear and then moved towards distribution, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, I was privileged in the industry being able to work in from medium voltage down to distribution, the busway, right? Mm-hmm. So I spent about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years with PDI. Great experience. That's when I really got exposed to the big players, co-location providers. Yeah.
This is like where your solid data center.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day when PDI was doing, the combo transformer, RPP.
Oh, yeah. RPP.
They were,
you know. What year is this?
I joined PDI in 2015.
2015. Oh,
2015. Man. Now, here's the interesting portion. Before that, that's where I start seeing the opportunity down in Latin America. And, traveling to Latin America, working, 500 kVA projects, a megawatt, 2 megawatts, because I was doing all Latin America, right? It was Mexico, Chile, Peru, Colombia,
kVA
spending weeks in those countries, and then come to the United States and 150 megawatt facility, line energy, right? I go, how is this?
It's like the whole country of Mexico's data centers in one project.
Well, Mexico had no more than 40 megawatts commissioned. Right?
Oh, total capacity?
Yeah,
40,
50 megawatts.
How crazy is that? Because we can all think about a dozen sites around the U.S. They're like, oh, that's one building.
That's a small building, right? So back then, I had the idea, right? Why aren't we building in scale in Mexico? And one of the things that I understood, I took away from all my travels and living in the United States was that language was not a barrier. Just people couldn't communicate properly. And a U.S. company tried to enter the Mexico market, and they didn't let them. They had to go back. And then what happened was that U.S. companies started buying companies in Brazil. That was interesting because instead of traveling from north to south, they went up to Brazil, and then they started moving up north. Because Mexico is a very particular country, right? The scale of construction wasn't there, the experience wasn't there, and people were concerned that they were getting in trouble. And I'm not even, talking about the whole safety and security situation right now in Mexico. It's more of a the basic terms in Mexico mañana, right? I'll get it tomorrow to you. Or did you understand? Yeah, absolutely. And then
got it, man. 100%.
1 week later, so what happened?
Damn thing.
I don't know. I don't know what happened. So,
and that's an acceptable response.
So I said, there's a big opportunity because we have power, we have infrastructure. There's a lot of resources down south, and not only in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil. There's a lot of smart people, right? And they're very hard workers, and they don't take no for an answer. They'll figure it out. But you can appreciate that the scale of economy is very different from Mexico and the United States.
Oh, wildly different.
So in the United States, if they mess up, right, it's let's regroup, let's figure out what's going to happen next year, and this is a kind of a learning lesson. In Mexico, you mess up, and the business is done, right? So it's interesting how Mexico has that capability of being so precise and at the same time not being very precise at all.
Yeah, just a different culture.
So
you were at PDI, you're in the U.S. Now you've kind of transitioned over in that you're going to live in the U.S. That's the market you're going to be operating out of.
Yeah.
What brought you to stay in the U.S. and not move back to Monterey?
Well, my kids. I brought my kids when they were very young, right?
Okay, so
and
they grew up in the US.
My youngest daughter, she's right now 15, but she was 3 back then, right? So doesn't know anything different. Now, the United States, if you have the ability to live here, you decide your own destiny. You can be the best that you can be here in the United States. And that's a reality, right?
That's interesting.
In my opinion,
that's your take coming as a Mexican citizen, coming over to the U.S. Because I think we get lost in a lot of the things that go on in our country. But to hear it from you, I want my kids to have the choice that you didn't have. It's crazy.
There's a lot of opportunities, right?
I mean, that's a lot of us feel. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this podcast, to talk about there's Hispanics working their asses off across data center sites across the country. And every day, nonstop. I mean, that's the main population driving these things. So for you to say that, it's going to leave an impression on me that we're lucky to be able to have the opportunities we have. And it is a pain in the ass sometimes, but we still get the opportunities to go travel these other countries, be part of projects. And the scale in which we operate, we really are the leader in data centers, like from what we're doing here. But hey, we lost track of what we're doing there. Your intro was like, hey, you're from Mexico, you found an opportunity to come to the US, and you've done a lot of cool shit. And where did we leave at? Like, how old are you? You're like 35 right now, like in your story?
Yeah, I even got, I don't even know by now, but
like what got you to want to be part of fucking doing what you're doing now?
Well, growth in Mexico was limited, right? And the United States growth was unlimited. So I said, I want to move up north and figure out what's going on there because there's a lot of things going on. And again, having that relationship with the data center industry, figuring out that there was something big happening, and it's an industry that's basically shielded from the whole economy, the world, right? It's incredible, but
just keeps humming.
Yeah, and during COVID, everybody was having trouble, and the data center industry just exploded.
I'm going to be really curious, Freddie, if you have the same impression of like coming from Puerto Rico and seeing the opportunities like in the mainland. So I was thinking about it as you were talking. I'm like, we'll come back to it, but like that's what I'm gonna be really interested to hear. Like, what was your impression of like? Was it the same thing as like a view on Mexico and like coming to the mainland? But go ahead.
So how did Layer 9 came about?
No, what made you want to even go that route?
One day, I said, I want to build my data center. There's a lot of potential in Mexico. We have a lot of great people, a lot of talent in Mexico.
It was the back and forth, like you were saying.
Yeah,
you see this massive scale and you see little drops over here. And you're like, well, they just don't know.
We need to scale up.
Yeah,
we need to build the data center with U.S. resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
What everything that's being done in the United States currently, let's move it to Mexico. Now, but in a very ordinate manner, right? Not thinking I'm going to go to Mexico with a lot of money and everything's going to work out. No, really figure out a way how the North can meet the South. And again,
I like that.
Yeah, the challenge is not language and its majority, at least in Mexico. Mm-hmm. It's how we communicate. So I thought of the idea a long time ago as I'm going to build a data center, a hyperscale data center.
That was the idea?
Yeah, because again, seeing the United States building 100, 150, 200 megawatt facility is like, we need this in Mexico.
We got the land, and we got the people, we got...
A lot of people said I was crazy, right? Well, you're Mexican, dude. You're crazy. I'm like, perhaps I'm crazy, but I'm going to do it.
Well, when I first talked to you like 5 years ago about this, there wasn't shit going on there. Yeah. There was not the news. There wasn't people. That activity didn't exist yet. So it's not that I didn't believe you. It was just like, what a fucking interesting idea. Like, let's see where it goes. And now we're here 5 years later talking about this.
And then, I had the project, and then Michael Ortiz, and I got together. Mm-hmm. I've known him for 12 years now.
How did you meet that guy?
Through Martin Antunes from Digital Realty when I moved to Phoenix, right?
Oh, so when you got moved from Mexico into Phoenix, that's where you met the guy that you're eventually going to do all this shit with.
Yeah. And, we kept in contact, but we talked, every couple of months or 3 months or 4 months. But Michael's background comes from a Latin world as well, right? Michael Ortiz, his last name is Latin, right? And, I came up with a crazy idea, right? Let's build a data center. But here's the interesting portion. As a Latin American, I said, I want to build this 60 megawatt facility. Let's start small. Then we can scale up. And Michael came back, no, we're going to go 32. You know what? We're going to go 64, and the campus is going to be for 96 megawatts. And that's when the North meets the South.
That's our level now. Like, that's like a respectable deployment.
It's a very respectable, but here's the thing. We need to start thinking bigger, and we need to start thinking long term. That's one of the main concerns.
Tesla is like right on your same thought process.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't waste any time by buying big and deploying big. That's just what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's long term, right? What's the runway for growth? And that was one of the main concerns for the CSPs, right? Mm-hmm. They came down to Mexico because they knew they needed more space, and they knew that Mexico was becoming a big part of the ecosystem. In fact, COVID helped.
Yeah.
660 million people in Latin America, 133 in Mexico, 133, 134. 60% internet usage. Just imagine the opportunity. Now it's growing exponentially.
Yeah, you got like almost a half of America that's like not been touched yet.
Exactly.
That's still going to come online across all these other nations.
So it was only natural for that to happen. That's why, the project was born. We have Mexico money as the seed investors. We have US folks, people from Virginia, from Florida, from California. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult, right?
You're investing on both sides then.
Oh, yeah.
You got Americans and Mexicans in this whole venture. That's fucking awesome.
And fighting against the big ones, right? We're kind of the new guy.
Yeah, David and Goliath right here.
Yeah. Right now, we're facing those challenges. But again, we have so many talent within the company. And
scrappy, man.
Exactly.
It's just small business. It's interesting because when you think about data center companies, you don't think of small business data centers, but you were absolutely a small business data center, like competing against not groups that are just in neighboring states, but across the entire globe. So we feel the same. A lot of people we compete against at Overwatch, they're global corporations. So it's not often, though, you think about it, but you're the small business in Mexico building data centers, and you're competing at the scale at which, that's what we're trying to do.
And, it's important mention that because of our knowledge in the market, we were able to secure power exactly where we are.
You're ahead of it.
Yeah, because people, they landed in Querétaro, and there's a cluster, but you got to appreciate that Querétaro is a 500-year-old city.
All right, let's hold on to Querétaro stuff, like the market stuff for a little later. Well, look, I think we've taken it through. You're like, you found your path to the U.S., you found your path to understanding the data center industry, and then you found the inspiration to be like, I'm going to do this shit myself. So like, we're going to come back to some of these things. Freddy, tell me who you are, tell me where you work, and let's get to know you a little more.
Wow. I guess, yeah, I'm a kid from Puerto Rico. I was born in the middle of the island. I was born in San Juan, but I was raised in the middle of the island.
People don't know that Puerto Rico is a
part. Puerto Rico is a part of the Commonwealth, part of the United States. You're born a U.S. citizen, so I don't face some of the challenges that Mexico or some of the places for Latin America face. It's very unique on that. I was born a U.S. citizen. My dad was military. He went to Vietnam, so he participated in war.
I knew that.
He participated in war.
Did we not talk about that?
We never have.
No, your dad was Army. What was his?
He was Army. He was a truck driver. He went to Vietnam, and then he fought for the country. And after that, of course, any military person, or many of the militaries back in the day, he became a policeman, and then he got cancer, and then he died when I was young, and then I would stay with my mom, and then. At the time we didn't have any benefits for the military, or police didn't give you that many benefits, so we were very poor.
He didn't get any military benefits?
We did at a while, but it took a long time.
The process. Yeah, no.
Well, actually, that issue of, it's different. A military from Puerto Rico, when the wife didn't speak the language. My dad married twice. He married a person in New York and then married my mom. So when my mom never actually went to U.S., so my mom didn't know that much. So it was a struggle to get the benefit, go to the VA,
Yeah, calling the VA and asking these questions without even speaking English.
It was a challenge, it was a big challenge back in the day.
Interesting.
So yeah, super challenging to go through life. And when I was 16, he died of cancer. But the VA,
at 16.
At 16, yeah.
You were in high school?
I was in high school, but my dad had cancer at the age of 50, and then he got me. He was 50 years old when he got me. And the VA found the cancer, cut their intestine, and then he lost another 16 more for me to live and have me.
How long?
16 years more. After at 50, he discovered with the cancer around 40-something. Then he got me at 50, and then he died when he was 66.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy that they found it and they were able to do that at 50.
Yeah, and then that's why I'm here, because they found it at the VA hospital.
That's crazy. Well, hey, that's a good story for the VA. Hey, yes, benefit enrollment still sucks for all veterans in some capacity, but I can only imagine when Puerto Rico back then.
It was rough. So yeah, it was that's kind of how I started. Then I went to high school in my hometown. We didn't have cable, or even though we're part of U.S., we're born U.S. citizen. If you're poor in Puerto Rico, there is the people that live in the city, and there's the people that live kind of in the suburbs, or in the farms, So I was more like in a farm little town, no cable. We didn't have even phone until I was probably 12 or.
What year was this?
This is in 1990.
1990.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to go, it's funny because to watch Jordan play, I would have to go to my cousin's house, and then we have to go to a place so I can see Jordan, for example, to give you an idea. Got to visit my cousin just to go ahead and see a Bulls game.
Yeah.
But I didn't have cable at home or anything. So you have to go to a place, somebody else's house that have better, situation than you, and try to watch a basketball game there, just for example. So anyway, so that's kind of my origins. I went to the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. It's a very popular university around Latin America because, of course, if you come here, you get all the certifications of US, but some of the classes are, some of them in English. All the engineering classes are in English. All the other classes are in Spanish.
Do you speak primarily Spanish growing up then?
Yeah, and even
everybody speaks Spanish.
Yeah, especially from the middle of the island, there was no English.
Oh, all the farms.
Yeah, it was in Naranjito. Everybody was Spanish. Nobody will speak barely English. One girl in my class probably did good at this, but because she was good at languages. But I don't think anybody else at the time. And I was, just a kid that liked to play sport and didn't pay that much attention. So I went to this university, which is classes were in English. Books were in English, classes sometimes were in Spanish. So you read the books in English. And if you're good with math, which I was, I could manage to do engineering without a lot of learning English. But
so you were good at math, so explain that. Because I know you're electrical engineer and everything, but you felt you were good at math even growing up?
Yeah, I was pretty good at math. I always have this thing about numbers. I can understand numbers better than I can understand words, So as an electrical engineer, that's what we do. We do have a minor on math. I took every single math class there is. And when I was growing up, math was my thing. So I said, well, I should be an engineer because I know math.
How many freaking Puerto Ricans out in the middle of farms that we're not sourcing right now who are great at math and could learn electrical engineering? There's such a shortage of electrical engineers in the U.S. and that who wants to go down that path? And you're on a fucking farm, Freddie, and you know this shit.
Yeah, small little town, little town, So I went to Mayagüez, study. Mayagüez is a very interesting location for the United States. My wife today at the time was my girlfriend. She was also going with me to school. She was top 2% of the class. So Mayagüez had this particular thing that all the big companies would go and recruit. Microsoft, Raytheon.
Oh, you got big names going down there.
IBM, every single GM. Why? Because they need minorities. At the time, that was this thing about, let's have minorities in the company. You go to Puerto Rico, everybody's minority. So you guarantee
the entire state. Yeah.
You guarantee having a Hispanic in your
and no
population.
Immigration issues. So you're hiring them straight up.
It's perfect for them. So they go and recruit there. So it was and even companies like Raytheon will fleet the entire plane. And we were pretty good, actually. Surprisingly enough, my school is amazing. It's an amazing school. They always win in a lot of stuff, so we're really good. So they get that benefit too. So at the time, that's how it was. Then my wife found a job in the U.S. At IBM here in Austin. And I said to her, I'll go with you, and I found a job. I want to be a designer. So an electrical engineer designer. So I'll find a job. Don't worry about me. And at the time, I offered her to marry me and say, listen, let's get married before. And then my wife said, I said, we can get married later. I said, no. She told me, no. Let's get married before we go. So I said, okay, let's get married. So we got married in February. We arrived in Austin in March.
What year is this?
This is in 1998.
1998.
1998.
You just got to Austin in 1998. Austin's wildly different.
Yes. I just came in. I was watching the internet, Windows Explorer 3.1, checking on Silker Park, and it was an amazing deal. I was like, man, that park sounds really cool. And that's how looking in the internet, that's how Austin at the time had the Austin Chamber of Commerce will created this program to sort of sell Austin online. Not every city did, but then we got all this information, IBN, and all these videos about Austin, and we got pretty excited. I said, well, let's go to Austin. So my wife and I packed and got married, went to a cruise for a honeymoon, and then landed in Austin. And that's how I got here. This is my road to it. It was very hard. When I came, I discovered that I had a lot of issues with my language. It was not like, I guess for him, I think in Mexico, it's very interesting. People don't get it. If you live in a lot of perception with Latin America, Latin America, if you come, like if you're in a good city, Monterrey, Mexico City, or you go to Buenos Aires, or you go to Santiago, any of these places, they got great schools. Usually people will speak really well English. So compared to us in Puerto Rico, where we grow on the public system, which is just like Texas, but then without only one English class, and then you very Spanish, and then they really didn't focus that much in English. We don't get that good of an education in English like you do in South America.
Well, let me just compliment
you expect the difference.
You're right, but it's very costly, very, very costly to be in a school that will teach you English in Latin America and in Mexico. It's very costly. So the public system does not teach anybody
any English.
Yeah.
My wife went to a private, so my wife was extremely good at this, but I was not. So I learned. Because it was math, I would read the books because I learned to read the books, and I will read the books and figure out the books and answer the test because everything was in writing. Engineering, you don't get any nobody go and ask you questions on your verbal. It's all in paper. What I did.
Numbers
and papers.
Well, where did you even learn about electrical engineering in Puerto Rico?
Well, it was a guy. How do I got there? When I was 6 years old, 6 years old. It was a very young age. It was this guy fixing a power pole, and then there was a guy down below giving all the instructions, and I see all the sparks and the whole thing. So I was like, man, that's really cool. And I told him, hey, what do you? And then I asked, I say, what is this guy does? Giving all the instructions, said the engineer. And I told my mom back in the day, I want to be an engineer. I want to be that. And actually I did. Actually, I went to school and entered at that place where I said I wanted to be. So I checked that out of my
You went back
box.
as an intern.
I entered at Puerto Rico Power Authority. Yes, I did it. I checked that box. I did it. Once I did it, I was like, man, it's not, I need more. I told my wife,
I don't just want to connect them.
Yeah, I need more. And then there is not that much design here. So if you want to go there to do software engineering, I'll go there to do, my wife is a computer engineer. So if you go there, I'll go there to design. But yes, I did check that box. I work on that place that I saw at 6 years old. So that's what it drove me
to be. That's what got you in electrical engineering. Something you came across at 6 years old.
6 years old.
6 years. I wish I would have done that before.
Yeah.
For me, it was take a crash course on power. But, hence I saw everything. It's I understood it. I understood everything. The first time I saw an electrical diagram, it was like, wow, I get it. It was very easy for me.
Yeah,
that's a cool story.
That's how I landed into this. That's how I landed into being an electrical guy.
Yeah, I love it.
So I went there, got here in 1998. I started working for a company called Getting an Associate. They were based in San Antonio.
Really?
At the time they were doing the AT&T Stadium.
Yeah.
So I got to do the lighting for that.
Did the lighting for the AT&T Stadium?
It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool, but it was rough for me, because when I got in, first I did a lot of interviews and I failed. I failed so many times I couldn't get a job. I realized because I couldn't speak the language. The first time I got a job is because I was underpriced. For me to get a job, I had to get paid less than everybody else. Funny that story, because when I was into Gary, the secretary at the time, or the person that staff the front desk. She got to see the numbers, and she happened to be Puerto Rican too. So she put me on the side and said, man, you made like 50% less than everybody else. And I said, yeah, I do. But I knew it because I can barely speak the language. So my first job, one of the first things I did is learn how to speak. And it was hard. I learned how to speak and learn how to communicate. So I barely didn't communicate much with anybody. I only got instruction and mainly did AutoCAD. So I was in a design firm. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. I didn't care. I actually got a better offer for working on Seguin, Motorola at the time. But I wanted to be a designer so badly. That's what I wanted to do. So why would I do anything else? So I said, I'll just do the designer for less money. And my wife said,
I'm going to get here, even if I take the less of everybody.
But it does happen, the money thing. And well, for me, I'm not going to say what company, right? But one of the companies said, I found out that I was getting paid a lot less. And I'm not going to say because I was Mexican, but certainly it had to do something with it, right?
Well, I barely speak the language. Come on. I was very hard to get me. So this guy figured. But I would quickly learn. And I realized that at the time, I said, well, maybe I can get another job and then go to ACC, Austin Community College, and try to take some courses. I can improve my English because I really had to improve. I'm kind of weak. I was thinking. And I started going to classes in Round Rock. And they offer classes for Hispanics that you go and then you take. So I started going at night to take English classes. I got to figure something out. Yeah. I was saying, I got to get out of this crazy that I cannot speak. So the language. I said, man, I can read it, I can understand, but it's hard for me to speak. And I will use the wrong pronunciation for the words. So when I say something, starting from a brand, I don't know. I call a brand and then people will look at me so weird because, of course, I don't have no experience with the TV or anything. So I started watching TV, I don't know. I said, I got to watch TV. So Dawson Creek, I watched the Dawson Creek series back in the day when I came in because I needed to learn the slang.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know about reading books just for the slang. And then the classes, they helped me. Yeah. So that got me through at the beginning of my career. And that's how I started. And I did pretty well at the beginning. Quickly I already knew how to set up AutoCAD, and I became very, very skilled on AutoCAD because that's what I do. I don't do anything else. And yeah, it was pretty good. My first years in AutoCAD, I did a lot of drafting. That's all I could do. But at the same time, in the background.
What type of projects were you doing at the time?
That was, I was doing the lighting for the AT&T Stadium. That was a big job. And I was doing hospitals. They sent me to do jails at Huntsville.
Jails and hospitals?
Oh, man, that was brutal. I had to spend the whole week at jail, and that was hard. That was hard work. You go in there in the morning at 8, then you leave at 5. You spend the whole day there. Sometimes they,
offer designing like extensions to the prison? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I think I'm remodeling cells and stuff with different projects. You have to go and take all the as-builds for the location. So send me there, and then I will do as-build. But it was a full day, sometimes 4 days a week in the jail, documenting the jail. So you have to spend the day on jail, and then you have to eat inside the jail. After a point, I say, no more. I'm not eating
no more
anymore.
Jail.
I'm going to go out.
No more jail food.
No. I'm going to go out, eat outside, and coming back. I don't care if it's going to take me an extra day. I'm not going to push it so hard because it was hard to eat at jail. I was like, man, I could not take it.
Where was this?
Huntsville.
No, where was it? Huntsville?
Well, the jails were in Huntsville. This was getting an associate, yeah.
No. Where? Where were the jails?
Huntsville, Texas.
Oh, Huntsville.
Huntsville,
There's
Texas.
Our language barrier.
Yeah, you see?
That's you said it 3 times. I only heard it the last one.
Huntsville, Texas.
Huntsville. Oh, yeah. It's a big prison system down there.
It's a big prison system. So I spent a lot of time there. I couldn't take it anymore. So the jails got me out of the company because I didn't like to go to jails. And it was booming at the time. That's what the job that we were getting. Only mind because we were the remote office, and the San Antonio office will do like the good work and then throw us in the stuff that a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. And then I got to go to the jails. So man, that was rough. So I left. I worked. Then I moved to wine engineering. That was how I got a little bit into data centers. Because wine engineering was a small company, but they did most of the work for AT&T. At the time, it was called Southwestern Bell. There was this building downtown that it was when the government forced to split Southwestern Bell AT&T. They split the building in half. So it was the Southwestern Bell side and the AT&T side. So I work on this. Our contract was Southwestern Bell, so I work in Southwestern Bell.
And that's the San Antonio office?
that was when I moved to WA engineering, and that was when we were doing Southwestern Bell work. And this is the phone buildings, switch buildings.
Yeah.
So they had generators, they got batteries, it was like the beginning of a data center. This is back in 2001, 2002. And we're talking about
it's the cusp of it all, like coming into what we're,
Yeah, we're talking about half a meg, sometime 200. I will go to Lampasas, that was quarter of a meg, Lampasa back there. That's where they connect some of at the time was the DSL. I don't know,
DSL days.
Yeah.
DSL days.
We were just talking about 250. You're like, you wouldn't even take that deal. And that was a whole site that serves an entire region.
Yeah, and I was working with this quarter of a meg on Lampasas in a little building. Round Rock, Round Rock was like a 1 meg or meg and a half, over here down South Austin, that was a 2 meg. That was a good one, on the, over here in Bee Cave. So all these regions. So I got to go to all of these, deal with the generator, deal with the batteries. It was a great job. Learn a ton. It was amazing. And that was how I got introduced to
data centers.
Data centers. It was the phone buildings. At the time, the phone buildings would do co-locations, which is these cages where I don't know, you remember, it was like Time Warner would come in and separate a cage with a rack, and then you had to provide the feeder.
They were the initial colos, yeah.
And you will have
initial
to provide...
colos.
Yeah, the first colo.
That began, right?
That's crazy that you part of developing that before you moved into the data center industry.
Yes, and they would feed in the power for that, and then making sure that we have a camera and an alarm for the that was it. That was what we were doing for Time Warner, for all the DSL companies back in the day that would offer DSL, because of course the infrastructure back is still today comes through these buildings. Mm-hmm. So it was a great thing. So yeah, that's my beginnings for the data center industry. That's how I started.
How did you get introduced to Page?
Well, no, after that, that's something he said that resonated a lot with me. His wife chose the location. Remember when he was saying,
your wife chose Phoenix.
My wife said Phoenix, and I said, we're done.
We start having
that's what we're gonna do.
We start having kids, and at the time my wife said, well, my mom came for the first kid and took care of it. My mom, and we didn't want to put our kid when they were first born in a daycare. But, Latins are very, very unique on this, very family-oriented. My mom said, okay, I'm coming in. My wife said, okay, sleep with us a full year. But I said, I don't want to live in U.S., my whole life. And then she said, I don't know, for the second one, I don't know if I can do it. So I told my wife, well, maybe we have to go back to Puerto Rico because we want to do this. So we were going to have the second one, and then we decided to go back to Puerto Rico.
No shit.
I started working there in the pharmaceutical industry there, and then I became a project manager, more in the construction side, not on the design side. Why? Because when I was at WA and when I was at Gettings, I felt like I didn't know every time we needed to run a conduit, I was like, I really don't know. It really sucks. Like the people on the field always say that you have to be on the field to understand it. So I said, I'm going to the field. So I did. I went to work on the pharmaceuticals. I worked for Eli Lilly, Amgen, Baxter, Wyatt, Abbott. So for 3 or 4 years there doing project management, I managed as a PM of a project around $300 million. I did a $300 million job, $150 million. That was a pretty good job size. The project I was doing was $800 million.
Oh, it's big projects, yeah.
And that was Humalog. Humalog is the insulin. With that plant, we feed the world. It's down in Puerto Rico. It's in Carolina.
Is it an insulin plant?
Insulin plant, yeah. Before that, this is very cool. Before that, they used to do the insulin out of pigs, So they would have these pig farms in Indianapolis, because Eli Lilly is from Indianapolis. They would have these pig farms, and they will kill them, and they will just sell the meat, but they will take some of the parts to do the insulin. They come up with a way to do it synthetically and with a fermentation process.
Interesting.
So they built that plant there, and I got to work on that. I worked there, and I got to be...
So that was like the first shift for insulin production to go from killing pigs to a synthetic mix that we primarily use today.
In mass production. And it's used today.
In Puerto Rico, no shit.
In Puerto Rico, yeah. So I got to work there, and I started like a scheduler. I became the PM of the project. So I did a lot. At the time then, when we worked there, we started with Amgen. Then I moved to Amgen, but Amgen, the FDA took the approval for the drug, so they closed the project. So I think I moved to Abbott. I was doing Caletra there. That was a different drug. then we finished that job. And then at that time, my wife and I were talking about, my wife said, well, the kids, and we miss Austin. And I told my wife, we can, I was in conversation to go to South Carolina, Roche, with a company called Floor Daniel, because CPM was part of Floor Daniel. So I was sort of working in a Floor Daniel environment. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, my wife's like, no, we're not going to
We're not going to Carolina.
We're not going to Carolina or South Carolina at the time. We're going back. If we're going to go back, we're going to go back to Austin. Mm-hmm. So as we say, okay, let's go back to Austin. So I came for an interview in UT. When I was interviewing on UT, somebody called me from Page. His name was S. Stevens. He was from Portland. He was the manager at the time. Called me and said, hey, do you want to join Page? And I said, well, actually, I'm in town. And he got me through the back door, offered me a job. And that's how I joined Page. And he believed in me. He was very progressive at the time. And the people at Page were very progressive. Compared to what I had to work in the past with Gaines and everything, I felt like they were more progressive, and it was a progressive firm, different flavor.
How many people were in Austin at the time?
Well, we were small, man. We were like probably 90, I will say.
Well, what's it right now?
Whoa, man, we're like 260. The company have grown. When I started in Page, we were like 400. Now we're like 1,400.
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked on LinkedIn earlier. It's like 1,700 is what it showed on LinkedIn.
Yes. So we are growing like crazy. When I started, I was part of that growth. So I joined. The office was under the direction of a guy called Bob Burke. Mm-hmm. His designer was Ricardo Trevino. Ricardo Trevino worked with me at Getting an Associate. So he put a good word for me. And Bob and Ed decided to issue an offer. And I was going to go to UT, but I told my wife, I don't know if I can handle UT. I'm going for this super hot, very super outgoing work to go back to UT. It seemed like reviewing drawings. I think that would be too slow for me. So I think I should go to a little bit more challenging. I think Page is the right thing for me. So I came in, but I wanted to do, by the way, when I came, talk to Ed, I wanted to out of the industrial. Man, always industrial, like in the pharmaceutical. I was like, man, this is so difficult. Like industrial is difficult market.
Yeah.
So I wanted a break. So I said, I want to do corporate commercial. And he said, yeah, we do have that. So I started with that, but then the market on 2007 is where I came collapse.
You started in corporate commercial in 2007?
Yeah, on collapse. And then I was assigned, because there was nothing else, a Bank of America job. And it was and that's how I met Alfonso. That's what I met.
Bank of America created so many professionals in our industry.
Yeah.
That program.
Joe Bowen, and I was assigned to that job. And I was like back from Puerto Rico, work a few years in US. My English was much better now. I was a different person. I came with more confidence the second time around. I make a huge difference, I think. And amazing people, Bob and Michael. At the time, Bob was the director. Michael Mays was the kind of leading that area, and had a great connection with the two of them. And I was lucky, and I just went in and started designing data centers. And I remember, I remember the first time I got out of the first Bank of America job meeting. It was like I told Ed at the time. Ed was one of the founders of one of the first designers that worked on the Microsoft data center. When Microsoft did the first stuff, Ed was part of that. So Ed was trying to do this kind of work here. So the first thing I got out of the meeting was like, I don't even know what N+1 means. What the heck is, I told him, a Latin guy, what the heck is N? I don't know what N means. And he was so patient with me. I was like, any American would be like quiet, I'm like all excited. I don't know what N means. N situation is too much for me. I cannot figure it out. And he was like, no. And then he calmed me down and taught me what I needed to know. And in a few months, I was going and learning and working with the group, and started my first design. Before that, we did a data center in HP here. HP was north, near Wall Branch. Mm-hmm. And we did a data center there that I also had to see a little bit of that work. But basically, it was Bank of America, my first data center before Southwest Temple. But I already knew how to do a lot of this stuff. It was not that foreign concept because I did all the Southwest Temple work. But that was my first time. That was my first.
It's crazy to think where you got started, to go from AT&T, the like initial colo, and then see them split, and then you move on to the Bank of America program. Like it's like two of some of the most earlier programs that source most of the professionals in our industry right now. That's where you started. Like to come back from Puerto Rico and land in that, like the timing of it all.
And the company was shrinking. At the time, it was rough times. 90 people. We were, I think we were down to 90 or something like that. But probably we'll come up with a different number, but it was 90 or very small number. And it was tough times. We were only that job, and it was long hours.
That's right. This is still 2007.
It was only that job, and it was tough hours. And I worked my butt off. There was nothing else. And I was back working my butt off. I was like, wow, it's supposed to be corporate commercial, but I'm back on industrial. I discovered that data center was just another flavor of industrial work.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, it's the same thing. So I had it. So I started working, and I figured it out. And we, it's funny because, I remember, but it was the time that, for example, I even came up with names, there was the RPPs, and then we created this intermediate panel that I call it RDP, and then people, PDI, and everybody started calling RDP. So I felt like set some name trends.
They were never called RDPs. I think it was Vertiv. Was it Vertiv?
I call it RDP. I claim the RDP.
Everybody called it what they wanted. It was a panel board, right?
It was a panel board.
Mix up the letters.
I was like, wow, I call it RDP, and it was like, yeah, that was a main panel between the PDU and the RPPs, it was, I call it RDP. And it was like, I saw it other places, and maybe it was coincidence that some people remote distribution panel, that's what I call it. But
yeah.
But I think some other people use it too. I don't know if it was luck, but
that's, that's kind of the interesting portion of the data center industry when people like Freddys started, being creative and coming up with ideas that are right now embedded in the whole design, like PDUs or RPPs, or even busways.
We were still putting it all together. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like there was not a data center designed to standardize when you started with AT&T or when you went on to fucking Bank of America.
And there were, just a small amount of people that really knew how to build, right? Back then.
Jeez, even smaller.
Yeah,
like
smaller.
What it is now.
EYP and those guys, they were like,
they all did it once.
Yeah. But now, it changed.
But the Bank of America account was a great account,
Brian, how long was it? You started 2007. When did you get off the Bank of America?
I think it was like 2013. They started going colo at the time, like 5 years later. But I got to do Bryant Park. Bryant Park. You understand? That is downtown New York. That's not any place. I got to work in Villa Park, which is in Richmond. That complex that they have down there was an amazing complex. And these projects were complex. And I was, I remember one time, I went into Villa Park, which is in Virginia. And I had this generator replacement, this UPS replacement project because they wanted to have, Bank of America was one of those that said, well, let's have 15 minutes or half an hour. And on top of that, let me have another UPS. So I never go in. I'm always going to be to end. So we call it the swing. I had to implement that thing in a live data center. I went in 1 week and I told my wife, listen, if you hear the news that the bank is down, it is my fault. But I orchestrated a whole shutdown for Bank of America to connect equipment live before the Japan market opened. But Bank of America gave you so many great experience and created so many great people in the process. I think Bank of America School was a great beginning for many of the leaders that are today. And at the time, I was just an engineer. That forging myself.
That's what made your career then, you think?
I think so. If I would go back, probably so. We were pretty successful at that account, and we managed to get so many accounts. We were started doing like 1 megawatt, and he said later on my group is doing 100 megawatts a year, 150 megawatts a year.
Damn, I didn't realize you were doing that much out there.
4 or 5 in the nation. Well, you do this massive one, and you said each of this building is 30, and then you do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of those, and we quickly move.
The original hyperscalers, like fucking Bank of America and financial institutions.
Easy compared. Bank of America was a 30 megs, I think. The one we did, one of the ones we were doing. We were doing a 30 meg. Then we did a 10. We started with a 10, like a 12 meg. That was 4160. Then we moved to 15 kb with 30, and then everything was on the 30s. They didn't want to go that, and then they kind of dropped those, and then went to colo. They still keep Villa Park though, but they're not the same that it used to be.
The good old days.
The good old days. And they were very custom, you know. I had to learn, you know, I got the opportunity to work with a guy called Don Lee. Wow, what a master. He was a PhD. He invented the ATM.
The ATM?
He was part of the group. He did not invent it, but he worked with the group that actually built the first ATM for Bank of America. So he was a legend. Amazing guy. Learned a ton from him. So I was grateful.
You were fortunate to keep running into these like incredible leaders along the way.
Yes, I got to experience all these people, you know, and a lot of support from my company on that, allowing me to grow and, you know, and something that I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if it happened to you, but it happened to me. Usually, the larger the company, the more acceptance to the barrier of the language was. The smaller the company, the harder it was for me. People did not accept my language. Because the first thing I will have to go through when I join a group is my language. People always thought because the way I speak, my skill set and my knowledge were not up to par. Until you get to know me, you say, okay, he knows what he's doing.
Now that's it.
I had to break that a lot of times. The bigger the company, the easier that was.
Interesting.
The smaller the place, the harder that got.
It does make a difference. You know, I think I have pretty good English, but sometimes, you know, my words slip or something, and people ask me, "Where are you from?" Immediately, well, I'm originally from Mexico, and the answer is, "Oh." So it does come in play. Yeah, but it's true. The larger corporations, they're more used to that diversity than the medium small ones. I don't think I had any challenge. No, I actually didn't have any challenges in the companies that I worked for, but there were not a lot of Spanish-speaking people. You saw them on the manufacturing floor.
Oh yeah, totally.
A ton of them. Service as well, but you know, executive level, there were very few Spanish-speaking people. Right.
Very few.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone that you interacted with, did you interact with any Hispanics that helped you out along the way when you were with Paige?
Well, you know, Paige was special. I was lucky, you know, guys like Bob and Michael, they were not Hispanic, but they were very progressive, you know, in a way.
It just shows like you coming in, you have these allies, you have these supporters that...
Very progressive, but the company in Houston had a leader called Arturo Chavez, and he was Hispanic from Mexico.
Oh,
and he was extremely progressive too, you know, very, very a lot of ideas and a lot of change. And always worry about if you have talents, you can grow. And the company had this vision. So I think I was just lucky. I think to land in a place like that, to be able to grow. It's funny because when I started, you know, back when I came to I told you, remember, I got so many rejections. I tried all the local companies. Nobody wanted me. But now I own the town. I have the biggest group in town. So everybody that passed on me today, they have a little bit of a problem. But the largest engineering group in town, you know, that does MEP. Of course, if you look at vertical like HDR and some of the civil, they're bigger than us. But we are the biggest engineering firm in town. We're the biggest game.
From small town farm in Puerto Rico to, you know, mega programs out in Austin.
And when I came in Austin, we were not a mega program. We were a small group. We built it together. So, you know, guys like me and Tomer, you know, we built that group up and we made it what it is today. You know, just not me, the whole group, but you know, I'm not gonna say that I did it. It was a group effort, but I was part of that, and I managed to lead the largest group in town. From nothing, we were small. We were like 25 when I got. Now we're getting close to 100.
Yes. Well, starting in 2007, of all time to start in anything.
I'm almost 4 times the size. And for designers, that's a lot. Having 100 engineers in one room is kind of a lot.
So that's the story of getting you all the way here to Austin, getting back to Austin, and growing within Paige. What I don't think we started. What is it you do right now with Paige? Like, you just do U.S. projects? Do you do things across the country, across the world?
I work on mission critical and advanced manufacturing. You know, kind of that's my roots. Is kind of all, to me, blur is similar. That's what my office mostly do. We do a lot of government work too. I work on that.
Government work
I
too.
work on that sector too, because the government work allow me to travel. So I go to different countries, you know. I've been, because of the government, I've been doing work in Amazon, Peru, you know, all sort of different things. That means I do DOD work.
Oh,
when
cool.
the country is in trouble, I mean.
Yeah.
So I do certain things, you know, that are very unique.
Yeah. I was just thinking you were doing local customers, but you're doing like U.S. government projects in South America.
I do a lot of different jobs across the world. And I manage, support the mission critical and the advanced manufacturing area. So I travel and work. Recently, I've been helping a lot with the Mexico office. We open a Mexico office, and I express my interest. And I go there. It's like recharging batteries for me. I love that office. It's an amazing group. So I go there as much as I can, and I try to collaborate and contribute as much as I can there.
Anywhere else, other offices you work in outside of Mexico?
Yeah. I've been working. You know, I help work. You know, establish Albuquerque. I help establish. You know, help establish Phoenix. You know, Mexico. And some others I've been, you know, I think the group in Washington, it was also through us. We helped establish the Washington, D.C. group. We purchased EYP, so some of the new offices you know, they were already there. But many of the existing offices, I also helped establish Denver, work with Denver. So yeah, I have helped a lot of different offices. I still have the group here, but I'm trying to transition more and a little bit more into the, like I said, I'm kind of working on the market sectors and moving a little bit more to the business side. That's what I've been doing in the last.
So that's where you're at now. So you're taking us the full run from Puerto Rico, why you got into electrical engineering, how you got into Page, how you really worked in the U.S., even though you're from the U.S. You know, like how you you had the same transition from someone coming out within the U.S. It's great.
I am, because my dad fought on war, just like many people, like anybody else. So yeah, and
a lot of people forget. Like, there's a lot of Vietnam veterans that had children that are all Puerto Rican citizens.
Yes, sir.
And
my uncles, and my whole family. Like, my family is a military family.